Hello and welcome to Craftwork, a podcast by writers for writers.
Craftwork is recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Wolastoqiyik, the people of the Wolastoq River. I'm Miriam Riche.
And I'm Mike Thorne, we'll be your co-hosts. The music for this podcast is composed and recorded by Randy Nichols Schroeder. McKenna James Boeckner is a PhD candidate and contract lecturer at the University of New Brunswick, territory of the Wolastoqiyik people, with a specialization in long 18th century British literature. As a creative writer, they slay with playwriting and have a penchant for fractured states of reality. Their most recent project is an eco-horror audio drama co-created with Carlee Calver titled Us Solacent Seeds. Find more of their work at memoirsofassodomite.com. Carlee Calver is a writer, playwright, and filmmaker from Bathurst, New Brunswick. She currently lives and works in Fredericton, where she received her MA in creative writing, screenwriting from the University of New Brunswick. Her plays have been produced by Notable Acts Theatre Festival and Herbert the Cow Productions. She directed a 5 TV1 series called Skin and Bone that is now available online. Recently, Carlee was co-creator and producer of Us Solacent Seeds, a 4-part eco-horror audio drama set in northern New Brunswick. All episodes are now available for streaming online.
Thank you, McKenna and Carlee, for joining us today. Could you briefly describe the plot of Us Solacent Seeds for our listeners who may not be familiar with it? And also, what does solacent mean? We Googled it and we were curious.
Solacent is an odd, antiquated biological term that I found on a Wikipedia page late at night, and it basically used to define seeds that are released from their pods when they are hit by sunlight. So I pictured all of the sisters under intense heat at the moment of the play, and they were all releasing themselves, which is the basic definition of that word. The plot basically follows Catherine, who is dealing with the loss of her sister, who mysteriously vanished in northern New Brunswick. Catherine and her 2 other sisters are trying to discover what exactly happened to this mysterious sister who they parted ways with some years earlier.
What was it like to collaborate on something? What was it like to co-write together? What did that process look like?
I think we were on my back deck and I was planting plants and you were planting a little cactus.
Yeah.
And we began by brainstorming different ideas that we're both interested in. And we both veered to the New Brunswick. One of my previous projects, Skylark Song, takes place in New Brunswick, and it was my first exploration of what life is like here, because I'm not originally from New Brunswick. I wanted to explore parts of New Brunswick that I hadn't touched yet, and Carlee's from northern New Brunswick, so I'm like, why don't we go to where Carlee calls home and see what that life is like? From there, we did brainstorm plot points, and I think we also brainstormed characters that would drive the plots, and we were each attracted to different characters that we did brainstorm and eventually put in the script. I think Carlee was attracted more to the Daphne persona, who is over the top and whimsical. And then I was more attracted to the Esther persona, who is down to earth and wants things to be figured out analytically. So our 2 different brains were working separately on those 2 characters a bunch of the time, and the script developed from there.
I'm glad you brought up the role of New Brunswick. Like you, McKenna, I'm not from New Brunswick. As I was conceptualizing my dissertation novel, I found myself very drawn to just the dramatic landscapes and the atmosphere of the East Coast environment. In what ways did environment, or does environment in general, play into your creative approach?
Yeah, I really like nature writing, and I teach romantic writing, so late 18th century, early 19th century writing, which is very much a reaction to the Industrial Revolution and trying to find ways that human bodies can be more aligned with nature as opposed to progressing into a scary technological future. But bridging off of that, or maybe as a side point to that, I often find myself writing when I'm in nature. I have a dog who is slowly aging, and she now goes very slow on our walks together. But because she is so slow, I find myself opening my notes app as I'm walking with her and just writing down story ideas or scenes that could fit into stories, not whole plots, but just my mind wanders into the writing realm when I'm walking amidst the trees of New Brunswick. So I find that very much flowing through my body and into my writing, I guess I could say.
Yeah, I think I have a similar process. So I am from northern New Brunswick, specifically Bathurst, which is right on the beach Chala, which is the water that comes in from that part of New Brunswick. In my writing, I very much think a lot about the ocean and how the ocean is like an ever-present space that connects all these different people and points and even points in time. That seems to come up a lot in my writing. I really like how New Brunswick as a whole just feels like this big expanse of nature that you could just sort of get lost in. And interestingly enough, a lot of crime in New Brunswick is like arson and people disappearing. So it just feels like a mysterious place. I quite like sort of imagining what could be going on in the woods that we don't know about because we live in the cities.
For years now, I've been interested in what I have always conceived of as like nebulous concept of botanical gothic. I guess some people say eco horror. I like something that feels like a little micro genre that I have in my head that I often seek out in often weird fiction, I suppose. For example, when listening to your audio drama, it brought to mind writers that I love, such as Robert Aikman, Algernon Blackwood, and Shirley Jackson. It sounds as though you're very inspired by New Brunswick itself, by field research you're doing, but were there any narratives that inspired you in the making of your audio drama?
For me, my background is film. So a lot of my points of reference and inspiration are films and plays as well. I write plays. I'm not really sure what inspired this story in particular, but I had in mind like a house on like a cliffy hill with the ocean, and that melange in my head felt like a film scene that I've probably seen at some point in my life. Which one it is, I don't know, I can't tell, but it feels like something that's almost timeless that I've pulled from somewhere else.
I think in this process, Carlee very much brought the images of the script, such as that house on the cliff, the mysterious lost sister appearing as a bloodstain on the floor. I am not a visual writer in that I write plays, but I don't participate in the process of making those plays become real or visual. I participate in the writing, the behind the scenes, I suppose. But I did have some scripts and audio dramas that were inspiring at least my part of the project. I love audio dramas as a medium. I used to say that when I was a kid in Thunder Bay, Ontario, I lived 30 minutes outside of the city. And during those 30 minutes, my dad would play the radio, and there was this random audio drama that played on the radio station we listened to as we drove those 30 minutes. And I think it was about a chicken detective who would fight crimes. And this chicken detective very much scared me because I think something about the audio drama medium presenting images that you have to participate with, you have to imagine as they're going on, something about letting my imagination wander with this uncanny chicken detective grew nightmares in my brain. So there is a bit of that uncanniness in that we present images, but we don't let the people see them as we would in a film, I guess, or in a play. They just grow into an uncanny chicken nightmare of your dreams or a plant nightmare if we're going back to our script specifically.
Yeah, an uncanny plant creature that lives in the basement of our minds.
Beautiful.
In northern New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into film later because I know, Carlee, you're a filmmaker, and I'm sorry if this is a movie I love, so this is a compliment, but I know that it's not very beloved. Have you ever watched The Happening? M. Night Shyamalan's. It's like a plant thriller. It's very bonkers, and it's a lot of fun. I think it would be in line with your eco-horror interests.
I'm going to write it down because I actually haven't. Is it a horror film or is it like a psychodrama?
Horror film, I would say.
Absolutely. There's a lot of like spookily, the breeze blows through grass and it's like really creepy, or like a willow tree. I don't know. There's just a lot of like creepy nature, which I think all four of us seem to love. So that's great. Going back to audio dramas, I was curious because it seems like such a particular medium. What were some of the biggest rewards of writing a piece with audio as the only medium? And what were some of the obstacles? Did you have to get inventive with exposition, for example?
Yeah, I think definitely for me, our first drafts of explaining what the space looked like, it was a lot of Kath walking around saying what she was doing. Like from a film perspective, you should show, not tell, but what do you do when you can't show? It really forced us as writers to think in a new medium. For me in particular, how do we go about showing and not telling when the showing is not possible? And it was a lot of direction on sound. So sound cues, really, we have a lot to thank to our sound editor who basically created the what on earth would a plant monster sound like. It was really a lot on her and our director as well.
Yeah, shout out to Rebecca Tinsley, the audio engineer, and Naomi Udit, who is the director. Their roles in this script, this process, not the script necessarily, but the process of creating the script into the final version were immense. I think I shared the same sentiments as Carlee there, in that we weren't sure how to create this world with just words. And then we realized along the line that no, there's more than words in an audio drama. My favorite episode of the series is episode 2. And I think that is because episode 1 was very much us trying to set the ground rules of the universe. And then episode 2, we delved more into what we would normally write, which is conversations that exist inside that universe. I typically describe my own plots as very quiet, in that the conversations that people have might not immediately resonate with pushing the plot forward, but fit and sit within that plot, that world, that universe.
You were talking about showing versus telling. That's an intriguing topic to me because, like many writing dictums, there are, of course, cases where you have to tell. Like any writing dictum, there are always exceptions. And it had me thinking about writing advice. I find there are some pieces of writing advice that have stuck with me for better or worse over time. So I was curious for both of you, what's a piece of writing advice that has stuck with you for better or worse?
The Kraftwerk question. I was waiting for this one.
You knew it was coming.
I did. And I was honestly trying to think of an answer to this question beforehand, which probably I shouldn't have done. But one thing that kept coming to my mind when I was thinking of this question was not necessarily advice as much as recognition. In that the writing teachers that I remember influencing my journey, such as Taina Maki Shahal at Lakehead University, more so propelled my career, my interest in writing, by recognizing that I was doing a good job, that I had a talent in this medium. Of course, she did offer editing advice, but what sticks with me are her positive comments, suggesting that I should continue on this journey, that it wasn't just superfluous, a side quest, as it sometimes becomes. So I guess I would counter your question by saying maybe recognition is also as valuable as advice here.
I think for me, when I first started learning how to write, specifically screenwriting, one of the first lessons that I was taught was you need to make sure that your descriptions of actions, you're not telling the director how to do their job. You're just sort of presenting it as it is and creating a space where other people can have their input and bring your words to life. But then years later, I actually worked with that professor on their film, and I had the chance to read their script and saw that there were lines in the direction because he was also the director. And immediately I realized, oh, So it really doesn't matter that much. If you're giving your work off to someone else, you should have that in your mind. But if you're also directing it, you can go ahead and put that in the margins. This monster sounds like this, or this is a specific moment where we need to have this much time of silence or music to really create the tone. Basically, through time, I've learned that, rules are important, but they are also meant to be broken, and you can kind of figure it out along the way. One of the really great things that McKenna does in their writing, instead of putting like pauses and beats, you have this system where you put codas, right?
Yeah, ellipses, codas, something to remove that awkward pause in brackets.
So there's really just endless ways that you can go about formatting things or doing it the way that you really want. You don't necessarily have to follow the rules exact in order to be a proper screenwriter or playwright, or in this case, audio drama writer. Because that was another thing. I Googled, how do I write an audio drama? And of course, the answers I got back were plenty ways you can be an audio drama writer. So basically, we kind of made it up along the way. And it worked out wonderfully.
I really like that answer. And I was thinking about the ways in which in playwriting, you're not necessarily focusing on what the scene looks like as much as what the people are saying in that scene. Mm-hmm. But even then, I love reading plays that I might even characterize as closet dramas, which is a romantic term from Romanticism. Authors like Byron, who would write plays not meant to be staged. They were just meant to be read. I'm also thinking about Jordan Tannehill, who is a contemporary playwright, and I love just reading his plays. In those closet dramas, you have setting descriptions, but they're often very poetic. They still leave lots to the imagination, but they just list images that you can see in the scene. As my writing journey goes on, I'm constantly trying to find the happy medium between not saying too much so that a director can also have their role, but also saying enough that the director sees my vision.
As McKenna was talking and invoking one of their champions, I was thinking about people who showed up in my life at key moments and were really instrumental in me deciding, okay, I can do this, I can write, I can continue pursuing this without feeling foolish about it or whatever. I find as a writer, it's so much easier to find voices of discouragement. It's not difficult to find discouragement. So I was wondering, McKenna, if you have any other champions, and I also wanted to put the question to Carlee, if you remember any mentors, people who really encouraged you and who showed up at those important moments for you.
My mind immediately goes to my creative writing professors over the years, such as Tina, who I mentioned earlier. I also took a certificate in creative writing program that was offered online through the University of British Columbia. There was a professor in that course, I believe her name was Kathleen With. I might be saying it wrong, and I apologize if if this person, who I've never actually met face to face, is listening to this. But I hope that they know that they were very influential to me, because her course was on novel writing. And by the end of the course, we had to write an entire novel or a rough draft of it. And she was so complimentary of the way I ended that novel in her course. I'm trying to remember exactly. It was very metaphysical. It verged into like an alternate state of reality, but it was so surprising to her and so enjoyable to her that her feedback was almost a page of compliments.
Is that part of the influence as to why you like to give page-long, lovely words to people?
Oh no, calling me out. Yes, in workshops I do go overboard with my comments, but I think that's why. I think because recognition has been so important to me as a writer, I want to make sure the people I'm writing with know that I enjoy their writing so much.
I agree. For me, I feel like I've had a lot of different champions over the years. From my film background, Kat LeBlanc and Tony Rossetti, they are from the NB Film Co-op. They've definitely been champions for me since I was like 11, doing film camps and discovering my love of visual storytelling. For writing, the first time I sat down and wrote anything seriously was in a creative writing class at the University of New Brunswick with Dr. Sue Sinclair. And I took it as an elective, not thinking much of it. But it really kind of blew my mind that I could sit down and explore this side of me that I didn't realize was yearning to tell stories. And it was wonderful, and she was such a fantastic professor. From there, it really kind of spun out of control. And now I'm a writer.
This wild journey we're on, spinning out of control together and apart.
Are you working out any problems in your writing right now? To use an example pertinent to the type of work you folks do, I was having trouble with the blocking for a short story I'm writing. I'm not the strongest with gestures and dialogue, so I rewrote a couple of scenes in a script writing format so as to provide the scaffolding before fleshing it out. Along those lines, do you have any tricks to get yourself unstuck? Are you kind of working out any issues right now? Or is it just going great? Is it flowing out of you these days?
Yes and no for me. I find with screenwriting right now I'm at a bit of a block. I wrote a screenplay for my master's degree. I think it killed me a little bit. Now I have a hard time coming back to the form. But I've been really excited about playwriting and prose, oddly enough. That's a new one in like the last 2 months where I've been like, oh, why don't I try writing in this way? And it's been really rewarding. I feel a bit stuck with screenwriting. So if you guys have any advice on that, do tell.
I'm mostly working in academic writing at the moment because I'm taking a PhD in English literature from the University of New Brunswick. So most of my writing time has evolved into academic writing time. But again, on my dog walks, I do continue my practice of letting my mind wander into the creative realm. At a showcase of New Brunswick playwrights put on by the Playwrights Atlantic Resource Center, I did showcase a scene that I had written with my dog. I co-wrote it with her, as I told people, on our dog walks. So there is stuff bubbling from this creative liminal place on our walks through the woods. But mostly I'm putting creative writing in a box for now until after I'm done my PhD.
Seeing as we're all students from the same graduate department, I was curious, how does your academic work inform your creative work, if at all? It might not. I try consciously to separate the two, but I think there are probably unconscious ways that my academic work bleeds into my writing. But I try very hard not to let that happen. So I don't know if that's the same for both of you or...
Yeah, says the person who's writing an academic introduction on writing. Very meta here.
True.
But I think I do have that same sentiment in that I create a gap between my academic and my creative writing, because I'm working academically in 18th century British literature, but I have very little interest in writing historical fiction. I think I did try at the start of this dissertation to try and add a creative component, but it just wasn't working. I wasn't totally interested in these figures who are 200 or more years old. I did find cool, playful moments in bridging time periods, but mostly I left that on the wayside. So yeah, a separation there.
I think for me, I can't really separate the academic from the creative. If I get really into something, it just sort of happens. Whether I really want it to or not, something will appear in my writing in that way. If I have an idea for a thing, usually that idea kind of comes with this is a prose piece or this is this piece. The idea kind of dictates the medium that it's going to be in. Perhaps I should try and separate it more. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the best way to go about it is. Maybe
I don't think there's a right answer. I think every writer is different.
What exactly do you mean by the academic kind of influencing the creative? What are you thinking of?
Well, I suppose the academic context is usually like research, theory. As McKenna was gesturing to, I'm interested in metacognition. So actually, by virtue of trying to avoid entangling the two, I ended up eventually collapsing the boundaries. So yeah, I don't know if I had a specific set of ways that could happen in mind. I think for some people, the way they approach essay writing or conference papers might feel like an entirely different cognitive process than creative writing. You know what I mean? Like when I'm sitting down to write a story, it feels like a completely different brain I'm using almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Because now that I'm thinking of it that way, I feel like maybe some of my academic brain pops into my creative writing brain in ways that I don't recognize, such as with Skylark Song, which is the play I wrote during my first year of the PhD in a playwriting workshop with Len Falkenstein. I was also taking a Shakespeare course at the same time as that workshop, and we were reading The Two Gentlemen of Verona, which features a dog as one of the actors. And in Skylark's Song, famously, there was a dog in my production. And I think maybe part of my brain was like, oh yes, Shakespeare's doing this cool thing with a non-human actor. What does that look like in my playwriting world? Like a contagion almost between the two separate brains.
I'm like beginning the journey that some of you are underway, or Carlee, you have already graduated. I am going into my first year in the fall of the master's in English at UNB creative writing stream. And it's interesting what you're saying, McKenna, about this contagion of the dog. My main focus is folk horror, which I absorb a lot. Like I read, well, there's more film, I guess, than literature at the moment. But I feel like I have the permission to do it if someone's done it before. When I start thinking about my shirk, like maybe Shakespeare had a dog. He's Shakespeare, so you can do that too. Whereas before I decided to do the degree, I had already been thinking about the book. Maybe I'm putting false constraints, but it did feel a little more like I could do whatever I wanted. I didn't have to justify as much why I was doing something.
Yeah, I like that idea of writers giving permission. I remember some of the feedback that I got from audiences who saw Skylark Song was like, why is there a dog? I didn't quite have an answer other than maybe this Shakespeare is my permission to do it. Shakespeare reached through time and gave me the permission. But also those questions might have came from on the first night the dog was very nervous and was barking a lot. So maybe those commenters were from that first night. I don't know.
Having read Skylark's Song and also having seen it, I feel like on the page, it was beautiful and it made perfect sense. And then in practice, it starts to become more complicated.
So the dog in the script, Martha, she was pregnant, but we ended up having a male dog act as Martha, so I had to do some last minute changes to her pregnancy. So the dog did introduce a constraint, but I also thought it was a cool blending of humans with non-humans in a visible space. I don't know.
I have a filmmaker friend, and they desperately wanted a horse in their film, and they said the second you have a horse, the budget spikes. I guess having a dog on stage is a little less of an expense.
I guess so. Bringing a horse into a theater, while iconic, would be hard to pull off, I assume. But the dog actor was the son of my director, so it wasn't like a huge expense. The dog was already there.
I think this expense for the horse is like if the horse hurts somebody, maybe.
Now, if Skylark Song was an audio drama, then the dog would be no problem. Because you could just get some good sound effects or have a weekend with someone's dog and record them.
You both seem pretty adventurous when it comes to genre, doing prose, audio play, this closet play I've never heard of. Very interesting. Excited to look into that. Are there any modes or genres that you haven't worked within that you'd like to explore?
That's a good question. I feel like I've explored many a medium in my time, including short stories, novels, poetry, playwriting, now audio drama. I've even done collages of words, almost like blackout poetry with collages. But one medium that I haven't explored, but I'm so invested in my own time is not cartoons, webtoons, so comics online. I can't draw, or at least not enough to put together an entire comic, but I love the way that also plays with visual and written together in cool ways.
Yeah, I think I'm always getting new ideas for different mediums that I could, try storytelling in. Recently, me and McKenna we hung out on a Saturday and went and did a escape room. And we were briefly talking about how cool it would be to write the plot for an escape room and how that could be an interesting bit of theater or art to put out into the world. I'm just excited about storytelling in general, and there really isn't a medium that I have yet to discover that I'm not like, that would be so flippin' cool to do.
Stay tuned for our escape room coming to a city near you. We did also discuss the possible plots of our escape rooms, and I think one of us mentioned aliens, so be careful.
I feel like Estalus Seeds could be an escape room. Like it makes sense. You're in the basement with Kath. You have to escape. And then you're going through these traumatic memories, but there's also puzzles.
We didn't really talk about the basement in our brief plot summary at the start, but at the final episode, Kath is locked in a basement and is consumed by plant life.
Perfect
which is also
escape room.
what will happen in the escape room, yes. Oh my goodness, I think this conversation is winding like a vine.
Because you both, I don't know, you're just working in all these mediums. Obviously, character is like the backbone of a lot of mediums and forms, not to mention, I feel like even, I mean, I could be wrong, but even bigger when it comes to scripts, because it is just inherently involves character. How did you go about generating characters? It's interesting. It sounds like you both had a prime character that you were interested in when it came to Unsolicited Seeds. Did you generate characters together? Do you believe in making, big, rich character backstories or exploratory writing? How do you conceive of character?
We definitely didn't have our favorite characters right off the bat. We developed the characters together, and then over time started recognizing that, I really like how McKenna writes this character. And McKenna was like, I like how you write this character. And that slowly started to become ours to sort of develop further and then bring back together when we would discuss the plot further. What do you think, McKenna?
I agree. Yeah, I very much gravitated to Esther as we were writing the scenes. I think she might have even been the least fleshed out character before we started writing. We knew that she was a mom and that she was protective, but we didn't know quite more beyond that. Whereas with Daphne, we had a huge brainstorming session on Daphne, I think. We even envisioned a commercial that she made for her robots that she sells on the side, which didn't end up being in the script, but I think it's written somewhere if anyone wants a commercial about a sex robot written by an over-the-top, extravagant woman. We have it for you. But yeah, I like that you saw as well that we were drawn to the characters as we were writing. That you drew more to Daphne and I was more to Esther.
Mm-hmm. And Kath was kind of our baby, in a way. Sort of protecting her, but also putting her in harm's way so that she learns a valuable lesson in a weird sort of way.
That builds off another question I had about Unsolicited Seeds, because it is a very character-focused audio drama, but you're also playing with a lot of different genres and tones. There's a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of horror. There's also, I think, a healthy dose of humor throughout. So I was curious how you two were thinking about tone and genre as you were writing. Is that something that sort of just grew and developed organically, or did you go in thinking here are a set of tonal approaches or genres that we want to play with?
I like that you found the comedy in it. So we definitely went into the project thinking it was eco-horror. I think the comedy came out from our brainstorming sessions, because when Carlee and I get together, we enter this very wacky, zany mood. And from that wackiness, we developed a character who sells sex robots in Toronto, for example. These zany aspects definitely came from our oddness, weirdness. I hope you're okay with me saying that, Carlee.
I am totally okay with that. In terms of like the genres, if we were writing for someone who had in mind a genre, we probably would have stuck more to it. But because we were almost writing for ourselves and had a bit of a blank slate to work with, and no one telling us that, it had to be horror in order to get this funding, or it had to be this genre because horror doesn't sell or this doesn't sell. So we really could make up and do whatever the heck we wanted. And I think that's why it hits all of these interesting, strange tones and shifts in genre throughout the piece, for better or for worse.
Yeah, speaking of funding, the funding for this project did come from Arts NB, And while we were making the application for it, I think we did fit our project into the box. It was before it was even started becoming a thing. We did market it as eco horror just so it was a clear idea, but then it ballooned from there.
If I remember correctly, too, when we were first conceiving this idea for the application to get the grant funding, it was almost like a film noir kind of mystery where the house itself was the main character, not Kath. And she had not necessarily seen from her cameras, but heard off in the periphery her owner dying by gunshot and then wondering what happened. And then it was more of a meditation of the house itself trying to figure out this mystery of what happened to her owner. And that, of course, shifted, probably mostly likely because we were working in a medium where there was no visuals. We needed characters to come into the space and talk and interact to get the story going.
Yeah, I think that also bridges from our previous writing projects, which are dialogue based. Because
Yeah.
I've read or I've listened to some audio dramas that are very much a monologue the entire way through, but that's not necessarily what we were used to. So we needed people to talk.
It would be totally fabulous to have like an experimental film though, where it's all like security cameras inside of this house and it's just different shots of empty spaces and you can kind of see in the periphery maybe like a dead body and wondering how are we in this space? What happened? There's so many ways you could go about experimenting with storytelling.
I've been waiting for someone to make kind of like reality TV horror, like, like Big Brother, the horror film version or something like that. So I don't know, maybe that's not quite what you're envisioning, but I was thinking about that when you're talking about the surveillance cams.
There was an audio drama released by Mom Podcast, Moguls of Media Podcast, which was RuPaul's Drag Race as a horror audio drama. I can't remember the name of it right now, probably something that has to do with Slay. But it very much is reality TV horror. RuPaul's killing everyone.
I'm curious for both of you, are you conscious of your audience while you write? If so, do you find it helpful or is it more distracting?
I think for me, I'm very conscious of audience when I write, especially with the audio drama. I think really a huge component of storytelling is audience perception. So that's always in the back of my mind, if not the forefront of my mind.
I think Carlee and I differ on that because when we were writing the audio drama originally, I had many a swear word in the script, and then Carlee had to pull me aside and was like, this is going to be on the radio. We can't say all these things. So I think my answer would be no, but I'm often reminded that there is someone who will enjoy my process or experience my process.
That's a risk sometimes, and it's a difficult balance to strike. But I find if I'm too conscious of this hypothetical reader, sometimes I might fall into self-censorship. It's an interesting topic, and it makes sense for audio drama that you do kind of have to think about audience, because you have to think this needs to work. People need to understand what's going on. So to a degree, you have to be conscious. And the same would go for writing fiction. You're writing for someone to read it. So that's always somewhere in your consciousness. But for me, I try to shove it into my unconscious, or I freak myself out and feel creatively frozen.
Yeah, I can see that especially true with a genre like horror, how much to show before we put a reader off or a listener off.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember one of our guests was saying the first drafts, they just like to just completely go all in and not worry at all about anything. And then maybe with future drafts, they'll pull back or say, okay, maybe we went too far here, or maybe we should go further there, or things like that. As you're talking about horror, I don't know how relevant this question might be, but with the voice recordings in the first episode, I was thinking about the history of epistolary conventions in Gothic fiction, from like Frankenstein, Melmoth the Wanderer, Dracula, all the way to Carrie. There's often like epistolary devices in Gothic fiction. Is that something you were thinking about as you were working on Us Solacent Seeds?
Definitely not for me. But what about you, McKenna? You're the Gothic, or one of the two of us.
Well, I think if we rethink epistolary beyond maybe what we think of letters or found scraps of paper, we did think about audio recordings and the house's memory. We had a lot of discussions about what the house remembered and what the house did not remember, what information the house could give to Kath and the other main characters, and what parts of its memory were already being infested by the plants in the basement. So from that perspective, I guess there is that element of the Gothic in it, in that we have voice recordings, but then the recordings get very scrambled towards the edges of them, or even in the middle of them, there's some interference.
There's also the found scrap in the sweater that Kath finds.
Yeah, I mean, like often it's found documents, like the novel Carrie has a lot of newspaper clippings and things like that. Melmoth the Wanderer has a lot of found documents. And now, like, a lot of people use it to describe stories that are comprised of text messages. I think there are so many different ways you can play with the convention.
Yeah, like clues almost. I don't know.
Yes.
I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and there's always text messages.
Oh, us too. What are some of the texts that first got you excited about reading or writing, or Carlee, in your case, maybe it'll be films or screenwriters? What were some of your first literary or artistic loves?
Besides Chicken Man? Chicken Detective?
If it's just Chicken Man, that's fine. We could just go with Chicken Man.
Oh, goodness. Now I'm going to be known as the super fan of this ephemeral Chicken Man.
One film that I really, really seem to come back to a lot, it just seems like the perfect film for all the things that I enjoy. It's a Japanese film called All About Lily Shushu, and it came out in 2001, and it was directed by Shunji Iwai, and I highly recommend you check it out. So it's about these teenagers in Japan, and they are obsessed with this pop star who's kind of like Bjork, a little strange, a little esoteric, and it sort of follows them kind of navigating what it means to be young and coming of age. Before it became a film, the writer wrote it on this forum, and it was from the point of view of all of these anonymous forum users with their usernames, and some of them ended up becoming the characters in this film. And it's really fascinating. I wish desperately to find some kind of place where this exists still. It would be so cool to write something from the perspective of all these different characters on like a forum, and you making up a character that they're all obsessed with. It's so interesting. In that film in particular, the storytelling aspects are spectacular, but also the way that he plays with the medium. He uses different kinds of cameras to capture different moods.
Carlee has recommended this film to me many times, and I still have to watch it. Carlee knows that I have troubles watching movies because I am very ADHD. I can't sit still for very long. I was trying to think of what literary influences influenced me growing up, wanting me to pursue this career in writing. And for some reason, my mind kept going to The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I read it in high school in like grade 10, and I remember marking up every single page in the margins with notes or lines that I really liked. And I was like, wow, how does someone write like this and make me feel the way it does? I know there may be problems with that novel, but the way that it's written really made me want to figure out how words work with the human brain. How do words make us feel the ways that Sylvia Plath makes us feel? So that was very much my introduction to the power of language. I remember in high school, I was also very obsessive about the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. Carlee groans whenever I say this because there's also a problematic scene in that book. But I think I was more so obsessed with Veronica Roth as a person and how she marketed herself as this genius of writing, whether or not that's the case. She had lots of autobiographical details in the back of her book about her writing process and how she approaches a text and how we should all follow what she does. I can't remember any of her writing advice, but I remember being surprised that someone could be so invested in the writing process the way that she was. So Veronica Roth as a person, perhaps more than the problematic Divergent series.
How do you know when a piece of writing is complete to the extent that such a feeling is possible? Like for me, I only feel like it's complete when it finally gets published. Otherwise, I feel like it's not good enough to be complete, but maybe that's a little too self-punishing, but I'm curious to see what you two have to say about it.
I think that's the frustrating thing about being a writer. And in the theater world, I don't think a piece is ever really complete, because even when it has a production, the production is an opportunity to you to go see your project and see what could be developed further in the next production of it. So even now, Skylark Song, which I talked about earlier, I don't see it as complete, even though it's had a full production. I still have notes on how it needs to be evolved if it ever gets produced again. It might be a little bit different with the audio drama medium, because now we do have the podcast published on Spotify. So in a sense, it is complete. But even then, Carlee and I both have notes on how it could be developed further if we wanted to edit, I suppose, release an updated version.
Yeah, my gut instinct was to say, oh, when is it done? When the deadline comes. That's when it's done. But I never necessarily feel that way when I'm handing it in. Maybe that says more about me, that I am dwelling back on work and never feeling all that satisfied by the end. I don't know. Usually how it goes for me is I get really excited when it's done. I'm like, yes, I'm a genius. I just reinvented bread and it's fantastic and everyone should read it and everyone should have it. And then like a month or two later, I go back and I start, ooh, this is kind of cringe. And then I start wondering, if only I could take this back, make it my own again, put it back in the bread box. I don't know.
I think it might be difficult. Maybe we all relate to this. It's difficult to feel satisfied. I think I feel most satisfied when I'm actively in the process of creating, not necessarily when it's out in the world, which is an odd way to think about it, to be satisfied when you're not full, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I really like, Carlee, what you're describing, that it's a cliche, but the sort of roller coaster experience of working on a project. You have those moments of exhilaration where you're thinking, you're so high on the project and you're fully in it. And then maybe I'm speaking for myself, but there are some days when I look at it and I think, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, this is terrible. I can't, The difficult thing for me is to try to cut out those voices of judgment. Sometimes they're coming from, again, that kind of imaginary reader or whatever, or it's just coming from inside me, who knows where from inside me, but just trying to be like, I don't know if it's good or bad. I'll never know if it's good or bad. I can't judge that. All I have to determine is it done enough? Because it never feels done. Which element of writing do either of you struggle with the most?
You want me to reveal my weaknesses? That's a good question. I feel like maybe the editing process for me. I feel like there should be entire classes on how to edit, because I don't think we're ever really taught that. We're told, like, this isn't done yet, you have to go edit it, but I don't know if there's ever been an instructor that told me this is how you should edit. I think specifically on the macro scale, I'm very good at line edits, but I very much struggle in fitting scenes together in a way that is entertaining to people to watch. I feel like sometimes I might accidentally bore my audiences because I have a scene that plays out and doesn't need to be there, but I just don't quite know all the time how to tell if it needs to be there or if it doesn't need to be there on that macro scale of editing. I think that's where I struggle the most.
I think for me, I'm fairly good at pacing and feeling how a scene flows into the next. The thing that I definitely have the most trouble with is the next draft. Because usually at that point, I'm on that high. I just completed this thing. I think it's beautiful. No one can tell me otherwise. And then they come back and they tell me otherwise. And I have to kind of, okay, well, I guess I need to edit it. And you're totally right, McKenna. People, like professors specifically, is what I have in mind. They list, these are what you need to edit. Go do it. And then it's like, okay, I guess so. Here I go. And then you bring it back and then there's more edits. And you're like, well, did I do good? You don't get that answer. You just get more edits. And maybe that's part of the writing experience that we all kind of have to deal with, a lot of rejection. And then wondering, am I even good? And then eventually coming full circle and being like, you know what, maybe I am. But usually that's like a year later after the whole process is done.
That's so relatable. Even what you were saying, what McKenna was saying earlier about knowing a piece is complete, and then what you were both saying. I find for me, like when I'm writing something, I get so excited and then I end it really quickly. And then I'm like, it's done. I want to send it out, but it's always like too fast. And then it's like, I don't want to look at that part of it because it's annoying or something like that. It can be frustrating if you do the edits and then the person who's helping you workshop tells you there are yet more edits. So I'm in agreement with both of you. I would like to better understand the editing process and make it a little less daunting sometimes.
This is something that happened with the radio drama, where for me in particular, it felt like we were taking too long with it. Like the process was taking too long, and by the end, I felt a bit exhausted. Have you guys had any experience with that, writing something that just seems to be going on forever and getting a bit tired?
Oh yeah, all the time. This is a bit of a digression, but the other day I was at my parents' house. My mom's always trying to get me to downsize my keepsake boxes, all my old journals and stuff. And I'm presently working on a short story that I've been working on for years. And I'm just like, I don't know what's, I submit it, it gets rejected all the time. Like, what am I doing wrong? But then when I was looking through these old boxes, I did see really old versions of short stories that have been published. I haven't written a novel yet, but I can't imagine how long it will take if it takes me so long to get the short story to the version that is good enough. Maybe I put too much emphasis on getting published. Maybe I seek too much external approval, but I can certainly relate to just being tired of something and being like, I should be working on the next thing. Why am I still stuck on this? My body of work for my lifetime will be like 10 short stories if I go at this pace.
Yeah, no, I can relate to what both of you are describing. And I think maybe the answer to how do you know when something is complete is when you're so sick of looking at the thing that you can't bear to look at it anymore, One of the challenges I sometimes have when I've been working on, say, a novel for a long time is I might start to feel seduced by another novel idea. I might think, oh, I want to start writing that one. But I think it's important for me to finish a project, to see it through to the finish line before I start working on something else.
We usually say, have you read anything recently that's particularly excited you? But this is a podcast about narrative art. So I'm trying to conjugate that. Have you taken in any narratives recently that have particularly excited you, be they plays, films, television, video games, books?
An audio drama that I've been listening to recently is Dream Boy by Dean Terry. I listen to it on my walks with my dog, which is a theme in my life, it seems, because I keep answering about my dog. It's one of those audio dramas that is basically a monologue. There are side characters that come in and create dialogue, but it's mostly a monologue about a young man who is experiencing a break with reality, and he's trying to pull together what is real and what is not real. And it enters very fantastic, but also scary places at times. I don't know if I should say too much in case listeners want to listen to this after they're done listening to this episode, of course. But yes, Dream Boy by Dean Terry. I mentioned earlier that I am very into webtoons. If we have any comics fans, I always recommend Stagtown as a webtoon. I might even call it eco-horror, eco-gothic, about a young woman who returns home after college and also experiences a break with reality and sees things in her real life that don't quite seem to fit in with what should be real. Again, I'll let people read it if they're interested.
For me, I recently rewatched Truman Show, which is a fantastic film from, I think, like the late 90s. And that one's just great writing and great pacing throughout the entire thing. It's a sci-fi film, but it's also kind of not, or at least not in the stereotypical sense. And I find that really interesting. Also, recently, I finally got around to watching Baby Reindeer, which is on Netflix. Oh, the writing of that, oh my gosh, fantastic. I highly recommend giving that a watch. Just the way that they develop the story and get you to sympathize with a character who seems to be making the wrongest of choices. And it's fascinating. It's really good.
Is Truman Show Peter Weir? Is that the director?
Yes.
Okay, he's got real range. Picnic at Hanging Rock is like often my favorite movie, speaking of eco-horror and splits from reality. So another Peter Weir masterpiece.
Oh yeah, no, fantastic.
What are you reading right now?
I just started a book called Blue Ruin by Harry Kunzru. He is a British writer, and he's writing, it's a color trilogy. So I read another book of his called Red Pill that was really, really modern, but also really gothic and really intelligent, but also really like emotional, and almost read like a 19th century novel with all these plot twists. Blue Ruin is just about these people who went to the same art school when they were younger, and several of them have become very successful, and something bad happened to these three people in their past. They're kind of in a love triangle. I'm really excited to go back to it. That's what I've been reading. How about you, Mike?
Well, I guess because we were always reading together every night. I just started last night a book called We Are Here to Hurt Each Other by Paula D. Ashe. It's very strange, atmospheric, gorgeously written body horror, but it's also weird fiction. It's kind of metaphysical. I'm really loving that. I highly recommend that book to anybody who's into the dark and the strange.
I like the title of it.
I think you might like it, McKenna, since you're interested in the Gothic. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm on Instagram a lot, although I've been putting breaks on my Instagram presence, but I am there at McKenna_James_. You could also find all of my writings and my contact information at memoirsofassodomite.com.
For me, you can find me on Instagram, Carlee, CarleeJC. That's what I go by on Instagram. And if you want to find where you can listen to A Solacent Seeds, you can find that on Spotify, and we also have it on YouTube. And we also have an Instagram. But there's more underscores for that. I forget how that one goes. Us_Solacent_Seeds.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you again. It was really fun chatting with you both.